However, it's still a platform. You're renting from an apartment building, and your apartment you still have to protect. You still have to lock your door to your apartment. They're not going to take care of everything else. So, Microsoft even states in their own agreements, and I'm kicking myself for not having the exact page number on here. I know I was supposed to get that, but they even state it in their own literature that Microsoft recommends that you back up to a third party, which might sound strange. But it is absolutely important for you to be able to do that because you need to protect yourself outside of something happen. Whereas before, you lose power to the office or there's a fire or anything like that, you would want to make sure you had a backup copy for a natural disaster. Well, now you need to have
Right.
something in case they shut down that particular environment. I don't
Mm.
foresee outside of a major disaster ever Microsoft having a data center collapsing, but end users clicking on the wrong thing, allowing somebody to come into their tenant, start messing around with stuff is incredibly common. And I mean, I would just hate to see somebody lose all of their data, or have a bunch of stuff get added that they don't want to have added to their environment.
Sure. And we have a number of customers that have asked about, like, specifically if I had, let's say, workloads on a laptop versus workloads in the cloud, what is it that's going to be that open door? And in public cloud, this may be common knowledge to everybody, but the big difference I see is the misconfigurations or potential for them. So a lot of the tools that y'all are going to find out there as we continue to investigate are exposing those potential misconfigurations that might leave a door open unintentionally.
Hmm.
Um, I guess speak to that, Nick. Do you see some of that as the common go-to right now? And what are those misconfigurations that are commonly the
Hmm.
exposure point?
I want to tie that back even to a comment that you made about, hearing these similar topics, over the years, and obviously you having it baked in. So a lot of it starts out with good intention. You've set it up once a certain way. Well, over time, as I'm sure everybody can appreciate, although frustrating as it is, the complexities and the way that people are going after you change. So
Right.
these settings change, and the products evolve, and how you do stuff evolves. And it is frustrating to now, okay, and I need two devices to log into my computer, or I need this or I need that to get into it. However, what we see time and time again is somebody did a setup 3 years ago that was industry standards at that point, and then they said, I'm good, my security footprint is clean. The continual um, evolution of everybody else, that they're getting better and growing, and kind of building up, if you will, the threats. Well, the challenge is now on your side. You're not building up your protection or keeping up with what's going on. So time and time again, we find that somebody had set up um, some type of backup or some type of MFA. They didn't test it. So, for example, they didn't test their backups to make sure that they were actually being backed up properly,
Right.
or it was an old configuration that they have, and not to get too technical, but they didn't want to upgrade to the new conditional access or anything like that. And so you see it from software companies where they got in because of an old update, and people that didn't update their computers, they got in through an old patch. So time and time again, we see this as the biggest issue, and it's hard for SMB. It's hard for us to keep up, and I'm sure
Yeah.
Center as well is in the same boat. So I can't even imagine somebody who's it's not their primary focus day in and day out. How are you supposed to keep up with everything that's going on?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, a vehicle, even, you're going to take it in for multi-point inspections periodically, and you don't always get that opportunity with your network to do the same.
Hmm.
Um, you could add since we've gone to subscription-based services, features get added all the time, and who knows if everyone's going back and adopting those features, or if it's just those that are getting engaged for the first time with that product that are getting maximum feature utilization out of that investment. Yeah, so you talked a lot of too about the ability to test, and going through the testing phase or running a tabletop exercise is an area that maybe it's overlooked a bit. It stops at
Hmm.
the conversation. It doesn't go into actually a run book or a simulation. We do quite a few of those. We're taking the conversation from the table into the boardroom, from the boardroom into a document of exercise, let's say, of how we're going to all respond and react. If you don't go to that level, what would you recommend someone to do? How else could they know where to go if something bad does occur?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is you contact a professional like Center to be able to have some sort of guide in place.
To
But I
conduct it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I highly encourage tabletop. One thing, here's a scenario that many people don't think about, but it's reputation. So
Hmm.
something happens, it goes down, you're dealing with it, and you're in the middle of it, right? And there's pressure happening. You get a phone call, and okay, so now it's your spouse asking when are you going to be home for dinner, and you go, I can't, I'm dealing with a hack right now. You hang up the phone, don't think anything about it. They tell somebody else who, in passing, harmless as it is, they're not coming for dinner tonight. You had friends that were coming over. They're not coming for dinner tonight. That passes to somebody else, to somebody else. All of a sudden,
Hmm.
it's on the front page news. You've been hacked. You've been compromised. Your reputation's on the line. So
Yeah.
even if you're not worried as much as the physical, fire escape type drill of what buttons do I press and where do I go, the human element's super important to practice. So I say tabletopping is incredibly important. You don't have to do it every quarter, but do it once and make sure that you have some sort of breach coach that you can rely on, that'll walk you through these steps. Because keep in mind, when these things happen, they tend to be something that's illegal and it's a crime. And when crimes are committed, whenever you see any crimes get committed, the police officers will probably tell you don't tamper with evidence, don't touch anything, right? We need to investigate, we need to look into what's going on. And so panic ensues when you're not properly educated. Panic kicks in, you start doing stuff, and it can actually potentially make the problem worse.
Yeah, and we build out ISMS, Information Security Management Systems, which is the overarching umbrella for all those different, let's say, documents you might want in your business, from a business impact analysis to a risk assessment, all the different scenarios, business continuity.
Hmm.
Um, what gets, I think, left out is just the exercise of running through the tabletop, because how it starts is different every time. The beauty, though, is that if you can get the process to flow through the same flow, regardless of how it started,
Hmm.
then you really do have a well-oiled machine that's ahead of most of the competition. What I see is that those who have the right tools might isolate and contain the issue. They might even only have a minor outage from it, but because they didn't know who to communicate to, other facets of the business either overcommit or make promises that they can't keep because they didn't know this was going on behind the scenes.
Hmm.
So yeah, the people element seems to fail all the time. So misconfigurations, prioritization, understanding exactly what's inside the cloud environment and making sure that your team is attacking those potential misconfigurations. And then teaching your IT team and executives what's going to take place in the event that something does go wrong. Those might be my top two that I'm taking away from this. Are there any others you can think of that you want to make sure that everybody knows?
Excuse me, just really make sure you understand what the business impact will be for you, and
Hmm.
it, look, everybody's busy, and taking time out of your day to focus on this might seem like just another problem that you could potentially have. But you need to understand the true business impact of something happening. How many sales is that going to prevent you to get to? How many potential clients are you going to lose from this? The stress and strain of employee retention as well. You can see we see it all the time where people are just, freaking out after it happened, and then it's a difficult for them. So I say you need to look at your business and understand what sort of risk are you able to take on, to really justify going through this. But I'll back you on what you said. I mean, I really can't stress enough making sure that you're taking care of what's going on, and definitely the tabletop aspect of it
Yeah.
is very important.
Hey, that's wonderful. Center Technologies, we have a number of customers that rely on us for having that roadmap I mentioned earlier, and keeping them modern, not letting it become a complacent, aged network environment. This discussion we're having is not unique to cloud. It sounds like it's just best practices regardless of where your
Hmm.
servers sit. And maybe that's the piece that I'd like those on the event today to kind of take away, is that everything's changed and nothing has changed all at the same time. So we still have to have those check boxes for visibility, for awareness, for reaction, response, all those things, regardless of where data resides, stay the exact same. Nick, this has been really fun. Thank you for doing that with us. I know you're in Miami, so if you need to drop to get back to other engagements, feel free. We're about to have a lot of meat on, so if you want to stick around for that. I remember the last time I was with you was actually in San Antonio at
Yep.
Pinkerton's Barbecue, and I think you might still be
Oh,
getting over meat sweats. So I don't know if you've healed yet.
I went to the gym a couple times, but I
I
still
went to
got
the
a couple
gym.
pounds to lose after that. It was wonderful. Yeah. Well,
Good.
thank you
I'm
so
glad.
much
I'm
for
glad
having
you
me.
got
We
to enjoy
appreciate
that.
it.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So, guys, as Nick transfers out, I just want to put it out there that although we are a managed services provider company, that doesn't mean that MSP is the only thing that we have to sell. We're an IT consulting company alongside that. So this one-time engagement of documentation or giving you direction on how you want to protect your business in the event you have to respond to a ransomware attack or a different type of breach is type of business we do all day long. Where we draw the line at Center is usually in app development or web development, or really, I guess that's about it. If we can't do it, there's got to be a very unique reason if it's not those two categories. Again, the premise behind this is we run a lot of events behind the idea of tech awareness. We want to bring something back to you guys at a topical level, and then pair that with a fun hobby or a fun interest point. In September, we're going to be doing the same type of event in Fredericksburg at William Chris Winery. Taylor, did I have that right? September, William Chris Winery, correct? She's turning her mic on, so now I'm gonna make it awkward for her and just stare. Is that right? Perfect.
Can y'all hear me? I'm back. I'm live. All right.
So we're gonna be getting wine out to people who join that event along the process of how we make it. Is that the idea?
Similar concept. We should be in Fredericksburg, and it'll be a blast.
Awesome. And
Another
those of
fun
y'all
one.
who are near Fredericksburg that want to join us in person, we'll open doors to that as well. So if wine's kind of your thing and you want to join us in person, we'll make sure we accommodate that. Were there any questions, Taylor, for Nick? I forgot to even double check with you on that.
The only one was that Susan asked, and it was just if there's a template to start from that.
Yeah, hey
Center
Susan.
provides.
Is there a template to start from? Specifically around cloud, I think the answer is identifying misconfigurations and then treating the servers like they're any other server. So covering them with EDR and the things that we already do today for the majority of Center's managed services customers that are working with through SMS. Susan, let me think about that for a minute. There may be some other stuff I can put together for you. I remember we had Mark Sangster on a long time ago, and we said, what is the one thing you would spend your first dollar on if you could only spend $1 towards security? And he said EDR. I remember I asked Nick Ford the same question. He said MFA. So I think those two are becoming extremely foundational. Of course, backups may be the most foundational. All this other stuff that we're talking about, who knows, within a year might be more foundational than EDR and MFA. So good question though, please keep them coming. I do expect a lot of chatter on Teams. We will be getting into some things that are a bit more R-rated along the way. If anyone's concerned about their children who are off for summer break around, then maybe we need to turn down your computer or put in the earpiece. Things are gonna get weird, and that's okay. So I want to start by introducing Ethan Begley and Riley Walters. Thank you guys for being here with me today.
Yes, sir.
You guys are part of what makes 44 Farms something special. Like we were just discussing about IT, it's the people side of it oftentimes. Now, you got to tell me what's more important, the cows or the people?
The people, the customers.
Oh, the customers.
The
Look at
customers,
that.
pleasing customers. Yeah, we aim to please the customers on the cattle side and on the beef side. for
Nice.
sure.
Can you talk a bit about your responsibilities and what y'all do? You want to start, Ethan?
Sure. I'm Ethan Begley. I run our direct-to-consumer beef program. What we're doing here is we're shipping 44 Farms beef all over the nation. Currently, we can hit all 50 states. Hopefully, by the end of the month, we'll actually be shipping to Canada. That's something that we're working on there as well.
Look at that, Nick. They're going to
Look at
find
that.
a way to
We're
get to
thinking
your door.
about you. And so we have a small retail facility here in Cameron, Texas, where folks stop on by, buy all the beef they'd like to get. But primarily, our business is shipping. We're doing about 400 to 500 orders a week. Styrofoam coolers, dry ice. We get the beef from Cameron to wherever it needs to go, 1 to 2 days flat.
How much dry ice do y'all go through?
So specifically, 2 kilograms per package, and about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds a week.
3,000 to 4,000 pounds.
It
of
really
dry
depends
ice.
on, because the thing about dry ice, it sublimates. It goes from a solid to a gas. So whatever amount you think you need, typically you kind of have to double that.
By a little
And then sometimes there's a shortage, and then you got to go around and find another vendor. So I've learned
Supply
over the
chain.
years, always whatever you think you need, double it, because it goes quick.
I want everybody who's going to hear from a sales rep later from Center Technologies to have that mindset too. Whatever you think you need, buy twice as much from them for me. Appreciate that. And do the same, Riley?
Yeah, so my name is Riley Walters. I am the Director of Operations for the 44 Farm Steaks Company. So I manage the inventory for our food service program and also for our retail program. So we sell to about 600 restaurants in Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas is our home base. And then we sell as well to the Northeast, a smaller amount. We ship to the Northeast and Florida as well. So.
Nice. Riley, you said you'd give us a little bit of a background into who 44 Farms is and what really makes the ranch tick.
Yeah.
Can you get into that?
Sure. So 44 Farms is the largest registered Black Angus largest registered Black Angus operation in Texas, the third largest in the world. We've been farming and ranching right here on these grounds since 1909. It's a family operation. Bob's great-grandfather started it. He was a cotton farmer. And kind of a funny story, the truth is we really don't know where the 44 came from in 44 Farms. Bob always says if you got a good story, just kind of let us know when we might run with it. So
I think it was upside down. I think it was HH.
And so we focus on producing genetics that are relevant to our customers, to cattle producers. We have bulls in just about every state, so we try to produce bulls that can make it in the flat, grassy plains of Kansas or up in the mountainous regions of Idaho and Montana. And we have 2 large sales a year. We sell about 600 bulls right here behind me. 600 bulls in one sale, and we run them through that rink about every 40 seconds. We're selling a bull.
That's kind of a cool story to me. So those of y'all who are Yellowstone fans, there are scenes where they're in an auction room. This is exactly the room that we're sitting in right now. It's a massive facility with bleachers like you're in a gymnasium, lights like you're in a gymnasium, and the stage behind us is where the bulls will come out and an auctioneer will start talking about what they're selling. 38 seconds, each bull moves right through and gets bought by somebody. That's interesting, though, that you kind of skipped past something there I want you to double back for, if you don't mind. The genetics side of it. What does that mean to be a genetics operation? How's that different than a different ranch?
So we produce the highest quality genetics possible with our customers in mind. We want customers to be able to come to 44 Farms, take a bull home, and be able to make their operation more profitable and more successful. We focus on genetics that eventually will pay that farmer and rancher through birth weight, yearling weight, weaning weight, and then also the most important thing is that we're producing beef that's efficient while it's alive and on the ground, but also provides a great eating experience for our customers.
Now, y'all sell, you said you specialize specifically in Black Angus. So
Correct.
Educate us on why Angus and why black over red, or what's the significance of Black Angus?
So Black Angus is very well known as the beef breed, the business breed. It's very the breed is originally from Great Britain, and it's a breed that is very moderate. It doesn't require a lot of feed to produce this great marbling that we're going to see here in a few moments. And so that's the original. That's the reason that we picked Black Angus.
And I've heard debates over red versus black. There's some people that say, yeah, a good cow is a good cow. And there's others that say there is a specific reason why you might want one over the other. Do y'all have any theory on what would be best?
Black or red Angus? No, sir. I mean, but we are a Black Angus operation.
Understood.
So we don't.
Awesome. So the genetics piece to it, y'all sell the bulls to people. They create their own herd. You'll also do it by harvesting semen and selling just the semen. Then they can create their own herd that way as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So one of our most famous bulls, he's been a legend in the Angus breed. In one way, I kind of like to bring this information to people that are not familiar with the beef industry. They're probably more familiar with the sports industry. And really, what goes on here behind us is almost like an NFL draft or an NBA draft. We send out a catalog that has all of basically genetic markers, and the producers can find bulls that fit their operation. So it's kind of like a GM for a basketball team finding a really good point guard that fits his system. Same thing here. They find a bull that fits their operation very well, and then they come here and bid on it.
Okay. And then, so anything else? I mean, y'all do a ton of data collection and trying to maximize the profitability of the customer who buys that bull, right? So can you kind of walk me through, how do y'all make sure that you're maximizing a quality of a living animal versus like when you cut in, you go, oh man, tons of marbling.
Sure.
versus
So,
no?
so we've developed a software called Prime Intelligence, and with that software, we're able to track the calves that go to our steaks program all the way from conception to harvest, and that's something that is groundbreaking. It's revolutionary in the beef industry, especially with the numbers that that we go through every week. So with that, we're tracking how quickly can they go into a feed yard and get to the finished weight to where they're ready to go to the packing plant, because at the end of the day, the longer they're on feed, the more money you're inputting into those animals. So there's a million data points that we're collecting on the animals that we harvest through that Prime Intelligence program.
The software
Excuse me. Just one important thing is we're able to take that data and send it back to the farmer or rancher, and they're able to make selection decisions at their operation based off how well their particular animals did in the feed yard.
So that good data is allowing for good decision making.
Exactly.
That's really good. So when did the ranch kind of start that transition to more high tech? When did it go from luck of the draw and best practices to data and making decisions based on it?
Yeah, I would say our owner Bob McLaren is a very, very big thinker, and I think with him at the helm, we've always kind of been on the cutting edge of a lot of things.
Okay.
But I would say within the last probably 5 to 8 years, we've really started ramping up and allowing those technologies to come into our business to allow us to make better decisions.
All right. Real quick transition. Generally, we buy our steaks at the store. What kind of cow is that coming from? Is it a heifer, a cow, a steer, a bull? What are we buying usually?
The majority of what you'll see in a retail meat case would be a steer or heifer. The cows, an old cow that's been alive for 10 years, she doesn't get a lot of the grain that's necessary to produce a great steak. So oftentimes the older cows and bulls that have produced these great steers and heifers, they end up just getting turned into ground beef. Or actually, an interesting fact is a lot of higher end steakhouses use cow tenderloins because they're getting that tenderness, that great mouth feel, but there's not a lot of marbling in a fillet, and so they're able to make higher margins selling ungraded tenderloins on the menu compared to, you'll see the ribeye strip, sirloin, and all the other steaks on the menu will be graded. The tenderloins typically, if they're ungraded, they're coming from a cow. Interesting.
So there is a chance you're eating cow, but usually it's going to be heifer or steer.
Correct.
And even then, is it more common one or the other between steer and heifer?
It's not that I know of. I mean,
Okay.
it's basically 50-50.
Interesting. We don't eat the bulls?
Don't eat the bulls. They'd be very tough. It just gets ground up and turned into hamburger meat. So.
Okay. Now, y'all been through a ton of bulls. Some of them reach kind of a higher status, more of a Hall of Fame status, that live a really comfortable life. If you guys could ever see the ranch, as you drive through these beautiful big facilities and barns, there's areas where these bulls that are in retirement are living this plush life of just hanging out in the most beautiful areas. Y'all have immortalized them with pictures inside the auction room. Tell me, do you have any stories about any of them that are cooler than the others?
Absolutely. So we have our herd sires. So they're at the top of the pedigree, at the very top. They've produced thousands and thousands of bulls from us that have eventually produced thousands and thousands of pounds of beef. And so I would say one of our top bulls is what we call the bull named Bragging Rights, and he was born in 2014. He was a very moderate bull, but he had great carcass traits, and that's what really propelled him to become a just superstar in the Angus breed. He was top 1% in about 10 different genetic markers, and then after him came Heyday. He's a progeny of Bragging Rights, and he's a newer bull. He was born, I think, 2019, and he's kind of taken the reins from his dad, Bragging Rights, and has really become a just absolute rock star in the breed.
Interesting. And so do the employees here, do they get attached to different bulls or cows? Like, is it?
I think, yeah. I mean, we all take a lot of pride in these animals. We want them to live very, very luxurious lives. I mean, low stress is the top of our priority at all times when we're handling animals and when they're in the pasture. And yeah, I think one thing that's really important is low stress animals create great beef at a low cost.
That's good. So the job is to keep the animals at low stress.
Yes.
You stress yourself out keeping them not stressed.
Absolutely.
It's not
And
bad.
one of our legendary bulls, his name was Wildfire. He's now deceased, but he was a bull that was extremely tame. And we would bring restaurateurs and chefs from all over the world here to Cameron, and we would take them in the pen with him, and they would get to rub on him. And that was something that, if you bring a prospective customer to 44 Farms and you let them kind of hang out with the bull and take pictures with a massive 2,000-pound animal, that's just something that lasts with them and gets them into the program.
Is Bragging Rights still with us?
Bragging Rights is still alive.
All right.
Oh,
He's
Bragging Rights is
he's
alive.
living in
The
luxury.
other one's not, correct.
He's living in luxury.
Okay. Sarah just sent a picture of him to the chat. We just
Yeah.
need to make sure everyone knows Bragging Rights is.
Oh, from the pictures out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's our Hall of Fame.
Good idea.
He's a Hall of Famer.
It's amazing looking at the pictures. You said the top 1% of genetics. The necks on each one of those look different. The hump on the back of the neck or the top of the neck. What are y'all actually looking at there? Is it physical traits like that, or is it?
So actually, what's interesting is early on in the early 2000s, that was the crest of the bull's neck was something that producers looked for. To them, that was a masculine look that lended to higher muscularity in the progeny. And since then, the Angus breed has kind of started selecting for less of that. They want more modern animals, and so that's why when you look up there, a lot of the older animals have that large crest, and then the more recent animals, that's kind of
Not so much.
yeah, could kind of come down a little bit.
It's interesting. All right. So then what does go into being top 1%? What do they look for a high-end genetic?
So what we do, it's called an expected progeny difference. It's an EPD, and that's based solely off the sire and the dam, the mother and the dad of the animal. And those specific markers are things like calving ease, birth weight, weaning weight, marbling, ribeye area. There's a whole litany of things that we look at, and from those markers, the producers make decisions to fit that bull into their operation.
So fast forwarding in today, your clientele is either the rancher who needs a high-end bull, they would come here to buy from you, or it's going to wind up being guys like me who can't get enough steaks at the house that are ordering online, right?
Sure.
So I guess, do you want to take me through like that a little bit? How do we get these cows that you have here, the heifers that are here, into retail? Are y'all doing the same process with the software and making sure it's the highest grade there, or is that all genetic side?
So we chalk up a lot of the quality, the great quality we have, to the genetics. These steaks are so well marbled and they're moderate sized because they're Angus, but a lot of that comes from the genetic traits that happen right here in Cameron. And our business model basically is, you come to our ranch, buy a bull, you take that bull home and put it on your cows and produce, on average 30 calves a year. And then we will come back to your ranch and pay you a premium for those animals and buy them back and send those animals to our feed yard, to our steaks program. And the reason we do that is honestly, it's more cost efficient to come to a ranch and buy a calf than have to feed and maintain a cow for 365 days when all she's producing is that one calf.
Okay. So then that's an amazing program. So you're basically outsourcing the need to have more land to raise those cows.
Exactly.
You're putting that out there, then buying them back so that we can end up getting to my freezer.
Yep. And at the same time, we're
All
making
for
our bull customers more profitable, and that's the most important.
Very interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and do that segue. Do you want to, Chris? Can you show that aerial view real quick of this meat plate? This is Ethan. This is the box that we're shipping out. Is that right?
Yes. So what you're looking at here, right here on my left, you've got 2 prime ribeyes. Then you've got a prime New York strip steak right here. You've got a sirloin and a filet mignon. And so what you're looking at here is our 44 Farms prime pairing, and that's what everyone who's here today is going to be receiving.
Nice. So you mentioned prime a handful of times there. Go ahead and give us the grades. Make sure we don't mess this up. Prime's at the top.
Sure. So the USDA assigns 3 primary grades. USDA Prime is the best. Now, if all of you can see the marbling here, it's that soft white fat. That renders when you cook it, and that makes a juicy steak. Now, it's one of many things, genetics being the predominant factor in what makes a juicy steak. Mm-hmm. But scientifically speaking, we could say a steak with more marbling is going to be a juicier steak. Mm-hmm. And so that USDA Prime is, I think the statistic is about 8% of cattle in America grade prime. Now, Riley, you can speak to our cattle. You had told me recently that we were looking at 30 to 40% prime for our animals.
Yeah, this year on average, we're at 40% prime.
So 40% prime. So there's the difference in genetics right there. You have a national average of 8%, and then at 44 farms, you've got an average of 40%. There's the difference right there in the genetics.
Hey, maybe that was the reason for the 44, was the goal 44%.
That's a pretty good goal.
That should be the goal. So that's great you're mentioning that. Can you point out where is that fat that's maybe not considered marbling versus the fat that is?
Great question. So a lot of folks will complain. One of the biggest questions I get is, oh, that steak has more gristle. How is that a better steak? I have to explain to them there's intermuscular fat and intramuscular fat. Intramuscular fat separates two different muscle groups. Now, you've got the spinalis muscle right here, which is also known as the ribeye cap. That is separated here from the eye of the ribeye, and so this is hard fat right here. That'll render a little bit, and you'll see that on our cooked steak shortly. You'll get a little bit of rendering on that, but that's not going to be a pleasant eating experience. So the seam fat that separates these two muscles here, that's less desirable.
Okay.
A perfect ribeye would have more like this one here, a minimal amount of seam fat and a maximum amount of marbling right here. The more red meat with soft white fat, the more you get to eat. The more hard fat, you're cutting that out. I like to render hard fat into tallow, but a lot of folks might just throw it away or feed it to the dogs to scrap.
Nice, good reasoning there. So the ribeye itself is a pretty popular steak. I think that's maybe the king of steaks for most people. The ribeye's the wonderful one. Sometimes it has a bone sticking out of it that's about 8 inches long, and that's the famous tomahawk right now.
Yes, sir.
I laugh at my son. He's 9. He won't eat a ribeye, but boy, he loves a tomahawk. You strangle him. But the steak itself, you said, has those 3 muscle parts to it. The ribeye cap being my favorite. It grades extremely tender, but how do we really know what cuts most tender? Who does that? Who tells us?
Sure, absolutely. It's pretty well established what cuts in the beef world are tender. Most folks, if you ask them what's your favorite steak, they're going to tell you ribeye or they're going to tell you filet. Now those steaks, it really comes down to what muscle in the animal is it. How is it utilized? A brisket, for example, is sort of the pectoral muscle of an animal. And so the brisket has a lot of collagen. Now, collagen is a connective tissue. It breaks down and it becomes gelatin, but it won't do that until it hits about 200 degrees. And so when you're looking at something like a ribeye or a filet, for example, they are not going to have a lot of collagen. They're not going to have, you know, a vein or some other sort of cardiovascular tissue in there. And so you're just looking at a very nice, soft, tender muscle. And so that is tender. If you were to eat it raw, it would still be tender, and you could feel it. You could squeeze that steak there, and it's soft from the very get-go. Okay. But when you cook it, you can get it right up to 130 degrees, take it to a rare, and it's going to be perfectly tender, bloody, and juicy. But if you were to take that brisket and cook it to 130, you'd be like eating shoe leather, and that's because that collagen hasn't broken down yet.
Now, you mentioned eating it rare. Just for the little PSA for the group here, do you recommend they get these out of the box from y'all and gnaw on one for a while?
If you like steak tartare, you could do that, and that's what filet mignon is typically used for. But personally, I prefer a medium rare myself.
Okay, so this let's do a little anatomy class. There's 4 primals in the cow, correct? So you got the first one up here, the chuck, the rib, loin, and the round, right? And so working your way back, where is the ribeye?
So the ribeye comes from the rib, so that would be your upper back. So the entire ribeye runs down the back of the animal.
So picture in that tomahawk, that's the rib bone that's sticking from the back all the way down towards the front, and this is that muscle that runs the length of the cow around the back of the rib. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. The next one, you said you have a strip out there. That's got to be a pretty different cut than the ribeye. Do you have any words of advice on it?
So the strip steak is often what I point to as the difference in 44 farms. Most folks, when they've had a bad strip steak, potentially a cheap steak, they may have had a vein steak because at one end of the strip loin it does begin to have veins in it, which will make a chewy steak. Okay. But a lot of folks don't realize that a 44 farm strip steak is, honestly, it might be my favorite steak. It's a little more beefy and rich with less fat in it, and there's something about that I enjoy. Yeah. And so the 44 farm strip steak is the easiest steak to tell the difference. If you were to buy just your cheap strip steak at a store, it might be tough, but then compare it to even a choice grade 44 strip steak. Cook those two up identically, cut them up, you're going to notice a significant difference. That 44 strip steak is going to drip with juice and be very tender.
Nice, that was a great explanation. The strip for me often is in a T-bone form. So I guess touch on that a bit. The T-bone is part of the vertebrae, correct? The short loin.
So the short loin, this is a boneless strip steak we're looking at here. Now, if we had left the bone on, you'd see the tenderloin on the other side of it. And so oftentimes folks love to barbecue, myself in particular. I love to buy the porterhouse. The porterhouse is the widest side of the short loin. You've got a large New York strip steak on one side, and you've got and the way we cut it, about 6 ounces of filet on the other side of that steak. That is a perfect steak, but what's interesting about the short loin. On one end, you have almost no tenderloin. The attachment is there, but there's very little meat. So we'll cut our bone-in New York strip steaks there, and you'll see just a little bit of tenderloin on one side of the bone. Take it a little back, we've got the T-bone. You got about 4 ounces of filet on there. Very tender part of the strip loin. Take it even further back towards the end, now you've got the porterhouse steak, and that's where that filet mignon, that tenderloin is huge, and it's my favorite cut right there.
Yeah, even to qualify as a porterhouse, it has to be a large enough side of filet, and I'm going to butcher the amount, but do you know the answer to that? It's like 1.75 inches in diameter or something?
That's our spec, is 1.75 to 2 inches of...
In order to qualify for porterhouse?
For porterhouse.
Neat. So if anybody's got, maybe my wife at home likes filet only, and I'm a little bit more indifferent. Well, the T-bone's a pretty good one to share. The porterhouse is the best one to share.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking filet. Let's stay with it. So anything you want to change on instructions or directions of what you're describing there for that piece?
So I would actually say for all the steaks you're looking at here, the cooking instructions are going to be much the same. What we like to do in packs like these are great beginner packs. The prime pairing, for example, as we're looking at here. All of these steaks, you can cook them in the same way. The thickness is relatively similar. So you can take all these steaks, cook them up to about 135 degrees for a nice medium. Get a little bit of blood, a little bit of red, but not too much. It's a really good starting point. With the sirloin steak in particular, I might take that a little bit different. I actually like to take sirloin and pound it out kind of flat and make country fried steak with it. That's my favorite way to do that. One place that really does that a lot that I learned that from was Texas Roadhouse. Whenever I'd go there, I'd get that country fried steak, and I learned that they're making it from top sirloin, and sure enough, we started making that here, and it's delicious. We actually have a recipe on our website for that, making that country fried steak with that sirloin.
Yeah, so you work in that retail shop. Every Friday, you tend to do something different, right?
Yes, sir.
I think you have a hamburger one coming up.
We do. June 19th, if you're in the area, y'all should come out. We're going to have smash burgers. Riley and I have been practicing, and I got to say they're absolutely delicious. Caramelized onions, our secret burger sauce. We've got a Meat Church seasoning that we're using on it. He's a great partner, Matt Pittman up in Waxahachie, great partner of ours. We're smashing out these burgers on a flat griddle, and they're delicious. We're going to be serving them from 11 to 2, absolutely free to anyone who comes, and 25% off your order if you choose to place one that day.
Look at that. I can't get that's great. So Friday, you'll find me at 44 Florence.
Monday, June 19th is Monday, for clarification.
Is it Monday?
It is going to be Monday.
Apologies, sorry. I thought you did Fridays.
You're right, though. We do run events every Friday, but when I do see holidays, I know that a lot of folks are out traveling. We're located right off of Highway 36, major artery, get to Houston or Waco, wherever you're going. So those are our best turnouts. We'd love to run events on holidays.
Maybe we can talk them into doing a smashed sirloin chicken fried steak giveaway as well.
That would
be a big
We need to put
delicious.
that on the menu.
That'd be awesome. All right, so you got these steaks. There's a bunch of other steak types I can think of. One of the more common ones that I hear people talk about is doing fajitas in their yard with either a flank or a bavette, skirt steak, maybe a flat. Would you treat that different than how you treat these thicker steaks?
Absolutely. And so thin cuts are one of my favorite go-tos. Our thin cut steaks, we typically cut them to a half a pound, about 8 ounces or 12 ounces for the buffet steak. Now, if you're sitting there wondering what's the difference between that and a ribeye, the ribeyes we're cutting them to 16 ounces, the strip steak to 14 ounces. So it's half the size of that. Now it's longer, and because it's significantly skinnier than these steaks. The ribeye is about 1.25 inches, so you're going to treat that different than a thin skirt steak. With the skirt steaks or bavette steaks, I like to marinate them typically, or I'll do a dry rub, let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then just put a little bit of oil on that griddle, cook it real hot, and I'll just sear it on each side for about 3 minutes, give it a flip, another 3 minutes, let it rest, and then there's a very pronounced grain. Now grain is muscle fiber. You can watch those fibers on it. If you need a good example of that, on this, the strip steak right here, you can see the grain. Anytime that you want to cut a steak, if you cut perpendicular to that grain, it's going to release the tension that those muscle fibers have. And so going back to the fajita cuts, the grain is very pronounced on those thin cuts. It's very easy to see. And so as long as you slice against that grain and make thin strips, you're going to get perfect fajitas every time. And it's so easy to cook. You just give it a quick sear. It's, you know, I go to a restaurant sometimes with my wife, and I can't believe it's $30 for a fajita plate. You know, I can sit here at home and make that with 44 Farms beef for less, and it's better, and it's so easy. Probably 30 minutes from start to finish, other than just putting the rub on it and letting it sit.
Yeah, I think that's wild what you just said about the cost of beef. It's gone up for raw meat for sure, but restaurants have really jacked that up. And part of the reason I got into getting better at steaks and fajitas and things like that was because Lupe Tortilla took their fajitas up to $50 a pound, and I thought to myself, I got to figure this out on my own. But yeah, incredible how the prices.
And that's where 44 Farms is perfect for the consumer. We can help you recreate that at home at a lower cost or the same cost as what you used to pay. And there's something of, you know, to say about the pride of making it at home. You've got your beautiful cast iron skillet. You bring over your friends. They get to watch you cook like a gourmet chef.
Yeah.
That's something that I've really enjoyed doing since I've started working here, and it's something that we're actively working to allow our customers to do at home.
But Lupe's fajitas are just.
It is something else when someone does it for you. You have no cleanup. Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Taylor, I heard you have some questions over there.
Yeah, we had a couple. If you just want me to rapid fire a few.
Yeah, then please interrupt us.
One is, do you guys sell half or full cows?
We do not currently.
Okay.
We don't have the ability to do that.
There you go.
You could buy individual steaks to the point of a full cow.
Yeah, you probably, most people probably wouldn't want that because you're gonna get about 30 pounds of ribeye, and then you're gonna get about 100 pounds of ground beef with that. So
What I will say is,
Sloppy Joes for days.
yeah, exactly.
we do offer discounts at bulk pricing. So if you are interested in that, let us know. We'll work with you. We're going to get you a good price per pound in bulk because it helps us out. I'd rather ship one big box than 200 small boxes.
Well,
so if
here
you
we
are
are.
interested in bulk, you
Yeah,
can do
oops.
it.
Sorry.
And
What
how do
else?
we feel about Longhorns?
Ooh, is
Jamie-
Jamie on?
Jamie
Yeah,
threw
so
that in
Jamie's one of our sales reps, and she has a grand champion show Longhorn, and so she's been trying to convince me that Longhorn's better eating beef. So what do y'all think? Can Longhorn be good beef?
Longhorns are, I mean, they're great yard ornaments in my opinion. I mean, they look beautiful. Their horns are great. In my opinion, I mean, it's a very lean beef. There's a lot of people out there that even call Ethan and ask, hey, I want a steak that's very low marble. I'm trying to watch the amount of fat I intake. So for that, I mean, Longhorns are great. They're extremely lean.
And Longhorns, I've talked to folks that have Longhorn cattle that come through. One thing they always tell me is the only reason I have Longhorns is because they'll eat everything on my property for me. I don't have to mow anymore. But I've had them complain that, hey, I've had a cow butchered and it just wasn't nearly as tender. It was nothing like a 44 Farm steak. And so you can definitely eat it, but ask any chef in the world if they'd rather have Angus, Wagyu, or a Longhorn, and you're going to get the same answer every time. It's not going to be a Longhorn.
It won't be Longhorn. 2 out of 3. Were there more?
Have y'all talked about what's behind us? And
Yeah, we did touch on it just a little
Okay,
bit. We can
good.
touch on it again. I think it's interesting, since you're bringing it up right now, that you have so many chances along the way to eating a good steak, to make a mistake, no pun, but to make a mistake along that way. So not only do you have to pick the right ones here, you have to run that ranch correct for the offspring to be raised correctly. You have to sell them back right, to be slaughtered correctly into steaks. And then after you cooked it, you got to know where the grain is so that you don't mess up the way you cut it, all the way down to eating it. It's pretty amazing how many chances there are to miss on that.
Yeah. Is there, and this might be a dumb question, but I don't know.
No dumb
Is there a way to tell from the outside if they're sitting or standing right there, if it's prime or choice, or you have to how would we know? Can you
Riley,
see
why don't
visually?
you speak to that on how they actually grade at the plant where beef are processed?
So yeah, at the plant, so the beef is hanging. They've split the carcass right down the middle, and they slice it between the 12th and the 13th rib, and you get one cut face, almost like what you would see right there of the ribeye. And that cut face of the ribeye is scanned by a camera, and then there's a USDA grader that also kind of checks that what's seen on the camera is what's present, and that's how steaks are graded. Now, when they're live, you can do it's what pregnant women
Like an
get.
ultrasound.
An ultrasound. Sorry, I lost my train. Yeah, it's an ultrasound. So they can ultrasound the outside of the animal where the ribeye is, and actually see, they can get a good estimate of how much marbling is in that steak by using the ultrasound on the outside of the animal.
Oh, wow.
Now,
They can get the size of the ribeye and the amount of marbling in that animal.
One thing I'll say to that is you can have a pretty good idea of what the grade of a steak is by looking at it, but they're grading based on the ribeye, and so that's not a guarantee that a given muscle group somewhere else on the animal is going to have the same level of marbling as that ribeye. That's one weakness I would probably point out to it. We don't grade each steak individually, we grade by the carcass, but for example, if you buy a 44 steak that is prime grade, you're getting a guaranteed prime carcass that steak came from.
You can get a pretty good look at a T-bone by, so if anyone wants to finish that on the Teams chat, they can finish that for those of you fans of Tommy Boy over there. So you mentioned a minute ago Wagyu. So we've done a couple of events. This is our third one centered around steaks. The first one was around grass-fed meat. The second one was around Wagyu. This is the third one. It's around Angus. So talk about you said the options between Wagyu, Angus, or Longhorn. Why would someone choose Angus? And what do you think about Wagyu? Do you have a take on how that quality compares to this?
In my personal opinion, from having had all the steaks, the qualities are very much neck and neck. You know, it's kind of like a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. They're both going to go really fast. Mm-hmm. Which one is going to be your preference? I think, you know, I would encourage folks to experiment. Obviously, I'm going to tell you Black Angus is my beef of choice. Mm-hmm. Black Angus is very common here. We're growing the brand. It's easier to find. Mm-hmm. It's at a better price point, and it's very competitive with the marbling you get from Wagyu. Now, a lot of folks tell me, oh, what about Kobe beef? That's coming from Japan, sure, from a very specific region. That's going to cost you a lot of money. In my opinion, Black Angus has everything you need and nothing that you don't want. Mm.
Is that your answer too?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm going to tell you Angus steak is my preference, but if I could talk about the live side, I think one thing that's very interesting about how great the Angus breed is in producing great quality meat is they're much more efficient and they make great mothers compared to Wagyu animals. They have horns and they are not as feed efficient when it comes to getting them to that end weight when they're ready to be harvested. So they cost a lot more on the input.
Well, that was awesome. Can we segue in real quick, the cooked meat? Let's talk real quick about once these guys have received their boxes, it's frozen meat, they've thawed it out, they're ready to cook, right? So now we're ready to eat.
Absolutely. So let me bring these steaks over here where you guys can see.
You want me to hold that?
What's that now?
I could just hold it.
Yeah, you want to hold it?
I'll just put it in the car. I'll just set it in the car.
Don't eat it, right? No steak hurt there?
Put your gloves on.
All right. Let's get you guys set up here.
I could eat this.
Now, I'm going to do my best to not eat the steaks before I show you guys what's going on here, because the smell has been making us hungry for the last few minutes here. How's that looking? Let's turn it this way. Looking good? All right.
Quick question on how old are they when they're harvested? So y'all buy one back, you're ready to turn it into this cutting board. How old are they?
Really? How old are
How old are the animals?
Right.
So kind of the process to get this steak here is about a 4-year process. So from the time you turn the bull out to go breed the cow to now is a 4-year process. But on average, all of the cattle we kill are under 30 months, so under 2.5 years.
All right. So the way we've done these steaks, first we did a sous vide bath. We got them up to about 130 degrees. After that, we did a quick sear on our pit outside at about 500 degrees. Now we're going to put a little bit of finishing salt on these steaks here. Now, when we had them in the sous vide, we had butter, garlic, and shallots, which gives a great herbal flavor. We also had thyme and rosemary in there. One thing about 44 steaks, they're so delicious. Just simple herbs, butter, a little salt and pepper. That's all you need. You don't have to get too fancy with your rub on here. And so right here on this ribeye, this is that cap muscle. Now this is my wife's favorite cut of steak right here. Anytime I cook these steaks, she immediately takes that cap and goes running with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut that off so I can give it to her. There we go.
You got it back.
Hey, you're kind of like,
sorry, am I blocking the camera
became
here?
just your head.
Just my head, yeah. Now, what we're looking at here, it's hard to see the grain on a cooked steak. I always recommend that you familiarize yourself with the grain before you cook it. It's easy to see when it's raw. It's hard to see when it's cooked.
Pull this back a little bit. There you go.
So the grain, we're going to cut perpendicular to the grain. In this case, we're going to cut it just like this. One thing I'll say about steaks, whenever you take them off the heat, Buy yourself a little bit of time, give them about 5 to 10 minutes to rest. It's going to you can see there's not too much juice coming out of these because we gave them a proper rest. If you cut a steak right off the grill, you're going to leak all the juice everywhere, and it's going to make it less tender. So give it a few minutes, let the juices reabsorb into the meat. That way, that juice is in every bite. Now, with the sirloin and the filet here, you don't have to worry too much about the grain. You can cut it in almost any variation. It's going to be perfect. That's our filet right there. It's so soft. Look at that. Look at that beautiful color.
Let me see. Oh, I see that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cutting our sirloin here. You're going to notice when you cut a sirloin, it's not going to be as tender as a filet. It may look like a filet, but it definitely has a different fiber. You can see that there. The way the fibers run is a little bit different than how the filet runs. Now, strip steak right here. A lot of folks would cut a strip steak straight across like this, but it may look better to cut it that way, but it won't be as tender. It's typically better to cut it this way. It's a little more perpendicular to the grain.
I see that mistake all the time when people eat at home. That's a tough one to read.
Honestly, a good rule of thumb is the way that you naturally want to pick up the knife and cut it, do it the opposite way.
Just
basically
almost always
the hard way that this steak doesn't need, I don't want to cut it that way, honestly, is oftentimes the best way to cut it.
Interesting.
Just seeing all this delicious juice.
Right. Now, at home, I've gotten to the point where we don't even put them on plates to give somebody their own steak. Instead, we do exactly what you just did and spread out a sliced up version of all the steaks. People can come by and grab what they want off of it. Is that y'all's preference too?
That's the way we like to serve it. That way you get a little bit, you get a little bit of ribeye, you get a little bit of ribeye cap, strip. I mean, you get a little bit of everything.
Maybe my wife prefers it not be too rare, so the outer cuts, she might go grab the outer pieces and leave me some of those inner pieces, which is
That's a great way
me,
to do
right?
it. Absolutely.
So excellent display on that. I think that's it. If for those listeners today, if y'all wanted to do this for just yourself, I would just thaw it one steak at a time. But if you have a plan for Father's Day, a plan for an upcoming weekend, thaw these out all at once, cook them just like this, and make a show of it. It's my preference as well. I would argue that Center Technologies is the porterhouse of the steak world. And we are the perfect complement to your existing IT team. See what I did there?
I love it.
Yeah, so every strip ought to have a filet complementing it, and that's what our job is too. So with all that, we're starting to get to the point where we've reached our hour. I'm going to give a quick wrap up, but is there anything you'd like to leave, guys, with the listeners here? Anything you want to touch on that we didn't get to discuss?
So regarding these steaks, when you go to our website here, you can look up cooking instructions for each of our steak cuts. We have a lot of different recipes. The number one thing is you can always cook a steak for longer, but you can't take anything back. So always, if you have a meat thermometer, that's a great way to do it right. But when in doubt, just pull it out and take a look at it, cut it a little bit and see how it is. If it's too rare, you can always give it a little more time. But if you take it to beef jerky status, there's no bringing it back from there.
And Riley, you'd mentioned there are restaurants that are serving these proudly. So if anyone didn't want to cook their own, they wanted to go enjoy it somewhere else, give me a Dallas location and a Houston location, maybe if one comes to mind.
Yeah, so a great Dallas location would be Zavala's Barbecue. He's a great partner of ours. He uses our brisket. He does brisket boudin with our chopped brisket. He has beef ribs. Great barbecue. He's in the Texas Monthly Top 50. Another good one in Dallas is called Marty B's. It's right outside of Denton. Huge restaurant, serves kind of American Mexican food, just a casual restaurant. Great place to go watch a game. And then in Houston, some great places would be Georgia James. Is just a great partner of ours. Extremely high scale steakhouse. Chris Shepard's the chef. And then another good one in the Austin area would be Leroy and Lewis Barbecue Truck. They use our beef cheeks. Extremely tender and just a rich bite. The best beef cheek in the world is I was actually there on Saturday, waited about 2 hours in line, and it was well worth it.
After we did an event just like this, but with Pinkerton's Barbecue in San Antonio, Texas Monthly released their last top 50 right after that event, and we decided to do kind of a top 10 tour. So we ended up getting to do those beef cheeks, and we kind of did a video on it just like this. So I love that you tied that back in. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we break? Yeah,
I just wanted to say thank you for your time and letting us talk about 44 Farms. We have an open gate policy, so if you're ever in the area and would love to come see the farm, just please please feel free to come out and see the operation.
That's awesome. Yeah, so guys, again, we want to do these at least quarterly in order to bring some kind of tech awareness to you, but also something fun that you become better in your own backyard. And so if there's anything you can think of that might be a good hobby or a good concept that would work well, that's something you want to learn more about, let us know. We'll find it. And until then, I'm going to go pick out a cow. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.